18 years, Black Trumpet has been dedicated to building a resilient community around our local food system, sustainability, and social justice. And in 2020, it was nominated for a National James Beard Foundation Award for Best Hospitality. Chef Evan is a 6-time James Beard Foundation semifinalist for Best Chef Northeast. In 2016, he wrote an award-winning book entitled Black Trumpet, A Chef's Journey Through 8 New England Seasons. He's served on various organizational boards, including Chefs Collaborative and Slow Food Seacoast. And most recently, he co-founded Cultivate, the nonprofit organization that organizes local food and culture celebrations such as Pharmacue and New England BIPOC Festival. Mark your calendars. It's happening Sunday, August 17th from 12 to 5 p.m. at Strawberry Bank Museum. And I'm so lucky I get to be a part of that experience and be on that board with Chef Evan. The Professional Kitchen offers a unique perspective when it comes to mentorship, and today, Chef Evan will talk about how he has evolved, often unwittingly, as a mentor in his field. Creative Mornings, please join me in welcoming to our stage Chef Evan Mallett.
Hello, community. So for those of you who don't know me, I love this community. So therefore, by association, I love you all, collectively and individually. I want to thank Creative Mornings, an organization that I didn't fully grasp how much impact it was making in our community until I was invited back in November by Jen. So Jen Scamachi, thank you for inviting me to do this. More importantly, thank you, Molly Meng, for reminding me about 2 weeks ago that I had signed up to do this. And finally, on the Creative Mornings team, Nikki, thank you, wherever you are, for taking my circa 1992 high school PowerPoint presentation and turning it into something that is at least aesthetically pleasing. I also really want to thank Caitlin Piper, who played. Can we get a round of applause for Caitlin Piper? So here we are, talking about mentor with a undulating mushroom. And I think it's safe to say that nobody really sets out to be a mentor, and I'm no exception, although in first grade, I had a little bit of an inkling when I created a fantasy world called Planet Weird, which I populated with good and bad creatures that my friends and I would role play in battle on the playground every day. Playing those roles required orchestration and somewhat sophisticated mentorship for a first grader. Lollipads, Ninch Kebab, and Grill Monster, along with several other characters in this scheme, had names that, curiously enough, alluded to food. At that same time, my first 2 household pets were golden retriever sisters named Pancake and Waffles. So that was clearly foreshadowing. Now, as a chef and business owner, I've had to try to lead by example while recognizing that we all operate differently and have very individuated strengths and weaknesses. In 18 years of operating Black Trumpet and a few other businesses and projects, I have had my patience tested more than I could possibly document. But just as no one ever sets out to be a mentor, no one really ever sets out to be an asshole or a curmudgeon either. So I try to be fair and calm and reasonable, and I don't always succeed. But I aspire to. In a professional kitchen, regardless of status or location, the stakes are high. Our tools are knives and fire, and quick, precise movements are paramount for success. Cooks need to work efficiently but safely, and in most kitchens, there is little margin for error. I hope if any of you write a review of a restaurant experience, no matter how awful, you take into account the often grueling hours of effort that go into every bite on every plate that lands in front of you. Last night, I received an email about a paella that was too spicy. The guests in the email said that they would not dine in my restaurant ever again. Pretty harsh, right? So while I'm digressing, I want to forgive this further digression, which may or may not involve mentorship. But I also hope everyone listening is aware that immigrants are the linchpins of our industry. Obviously, immigrants are critical to every sector of our economy. But if they are removed from our industry, we are going to see a widespread collapse of the restaurants we love. Immigrants are living and working now in a culture of fear, with ICE raids not just in faraway cities, but right here in our community. Removing people with real lives, living the American dream, who work hard to survive, those same human beings who also keep our industry afloat. If we are going to ban immigrants, which I think is absolutely preposterous, we are going to have to reevaluate the cost of food again. This comes on the heels of supply chain burdens that have already driven costs through the roof post-pandemic. Or we are going to have to start from scratch and teach Americans how to work the hard jobs. And good luck with that. Some people seem to have forgotten that we are a nation of immigrants, and that perhaps the only ones among us who have a right to oppose immigration are the indigenous population whose land was invaded and occupied. In preparation for the City Council meeting on Monday of this week, which was amazing, I reached out to the National Restaurant Association for some national statistics. I can never say that word. As of April 2025, 23% of all food service employees in the United States were born outside of the United States. 31% of professional cooks working in the United States were born outside of the US. And an astonishing 46% of chefs are from outside this country. So forgive, but remember this political rant, please. In my kitchen, we have a role we call garde, which is short for garde-manger, the French term that refers to the station in the kitchen responsible for cold-plated dishes. But at Black Trumpet, in part because of labor costs, but also because of spatial limitations, that role includes the dishwasher responsibility. And that is not as simple as putting dishes into a machine and hitting start. It is about scrubbing pans furiously throughout each shift while also keeping a clean and organized workplace for plating all of the cold food. This is a place where sense of urgency and work ethic are either required or born. Other chefs I have known over the years have told me that they have heard the garde role at Black Trumpet is the hardest position in any kitchen in our region. Curiously, this is the entry-level position in the Black Trumpet kitchen, and it is where mentoring is most palpable, visible, and necessary. When I think back on the people who have started out in my kitchen in the garde position, I can immediately come up with 6 who ultimately went on to run their own kitchens and their own businesses, several of them in this area. There is a parental sense of pride I feel when I reflect on their career progression after Black Trumpet. And speaking of parents, the dad in me was glad to be asked to talk about mentorship because I have always made a cringe dad reference to 2 subcategories of mentor that I have observed in our industry: TorMentors and DeMentors. TorMentors are those bombastic asshole chefs you see on TV who make demeaning militaristic leadership look entertaining. DeMentors are more discreet in their exertion of power, yet still undermine their underlings by making their brand of crazy contagious. Both of these ultimately populating a kitchen with intimidated, aspiring chefs who learn that they too can someday get away with unprofessional behavior. When I was explaining these archetypes to my partner, Denise, she made the very good point that every chef has to be a little bit TorMentor and a little bit DeMentor. And she is right, as she always is. However, having agreed with her, I would like to put it out there that I believe we can strike a healthier balance. EncourageMentors. This is too long to say, so we can just abbreviate by saying TORS, which is what happens when we take the men out of mentor. I'm not saying there are no female TorMentor chefs out there, but I am making a sweeping generalization that women tend to be more thoughtful, caring leaders who ultimately seek to nurture their own rather than instill fear and intimidation through hot-headed acts of bullying and aggression. Here are some of the Tors who have informed the way I think about food and cooking in chronological order. And one of them is missing, but she's in the room, so I just want to say, Dr. Jennifer Seavey, you are a badass, and thank you for everything you've done for me. In part because of Dr. Jennifer Seavey, I discovered a few years ago, doing some research for a program we called To Take a Bite Out of Appledore, out on Appledore Island in the Isles of Shoals. I discovered a 19th century shiro by the name of Maria Parloa. She was a Portsmouth native. Like myself, a Massachusetts transplant. Forgive us for that. Who, among other great accomplishments, co-created the first cooking school, invented the science of home economics, or home ec, wrote several books, including the Appledore Cookbook, which chronicled her time working as a chef on Appledore at the Isles of Shoals. And my favorite accomplishment of hers, among so many, she appears to be the inventor of tomato soup, which in the company of grilled cheese is America's most prized comfort food. The next one on the list, we all know, Julia Child, not even arguably the high priestess of the culinary firmament. I met her twice. First, I interviewed her for a publication in Boston when I was a food writer, and she confided in me things that she liked least about dining out. I have actually abandoned almost all of those in my own restaurant over 18 years. One of them was the print was too small on menus, the light was too dim in the dining room, the music was too loud. I think we violate all of those at Black Trumpet. But, and the second time was at her 80th birthday party, where I got invited along with like 1,000 other people. And she entered the room, her 6-foot frame, entering the room of that banquet hall, parted the crowd better than Moses ever did. It was unbelievable. Thank you, Julia, for all that you gave us. And it was on one of Julia's TV shows that I first encountered, in one episode, Alice Waters. Yeah, Alice, give it up for Alice. I'm glad you guys know who I'm talking about. Alice taught Julia on this episode, and Julia appeared dumbfounded, about removing the sprout found on the inside of a garlic clove. And that's what Alice Waters is kind of all about, right? She was like supportive of so many farms, but also knew the ingredients inside and out. And Alice became a monolithic presence in our industry. It took a woman, of course, to remind our male-dominated industry that cooking, whether at home or professionally, is a nurturing, thoughtful, soulful act, not an act of violence or competition. Alice is rightly attributed with having spawned the farm-to-table movement in our country. So let's give it up again for Alice Waters. And the last two are chefs who are still around cooking in our greater community here in New England. Anna Sortun, who was a friend to me when I was a food writer in Boston, founder, chef, and owner of Oleana, Sofra, and Sarma, is one of the great mentors for other women in New England, and she's brought a lot of really talented chefs along notably some women who have gone on to become her chefs and chefs elsewhere. I've always admired Anna, and of course, we probably all know Melissa Kelly, who is a peer of mine. We are approximately the same age, which is hard to believe because she's accomplished so much. She's the epitome of a chef who walks the talk of the farm-to-table movement with a restaurant in Rockland, Maine, Primo, which is situated on its own farm, a stone's throw from the waterfront. And she has done everything right, so I openly, shamelessly worship her work as a chef and a human. All of these women have had to be tough in a male-dominated industry, but they have also outlasted most of their male counterparts, I would argue, because they are neither TorMentors nor DeMentors. They have never relied on histrionics, spewing saliva from a red face. I love that about them. I have never worn a toque, the funny tall hat that chefs wear, but if I did, I would tip it to them. So thank you to my EncourageMentors. Most of the culinary pillars I chose to think of as mentors did not intend to be mentors, nor did they know they were, even as they were mentoring me, because I barely knew most of them. But when you get to know your mentor, I would propose a fourth evolutionary archetype, the FriendTor. When I first came to Portsmouth, I had a meal upstairs in the restaurant that has now been mine for almost 2 decades. And the next day, I went and I introduced myself to Chef Jeff Tenner, who was the chef of Lindbergh's Crossing. And yeah, local hero, so give it up for Jeff. He reluctantly hired me that day without much actual restaurant cooking on my resume. And he taught me the ins and outs of making quality food in the tiniest of kitchens. That was Lindbergh's Crossing, and after I worked there, I left to cook for a while in Mexico. George W. Bush was elected, the towers fell, my daughter was born, we decided to move to Mexico. We thought George W. Bush was bad. Anyway, so we cooked for a while in Mexico. And incidentally, I was called Mojada, was my nickname, which was an affectionate term for the racist epithet wetback, because I had crossed the border illegally to work in Mexico. So then I came back after that to the kitchen at 29 Ceres Street to become the chef and ultimately the owner, and that's how Black Trumpet was born. Jeff Tenner planted that seed, so thank you, Jeff. The first guy you see on the left there is Buddy Holler. Most of you at this point may not know his influence, but he was the first reason Portsmouth was ever viewed as a food destination. In 1970, he smeared a greasy warehouse window on the rough working waterfront of Ceres Street and decided that would be the home of his dream restaurant, which he named Blue Strawberry. That was a block where my mother, a Portsmouth native, was not permitted to walk down at night. It was the red light district back then, and Buddy Holler had the vision to build a dream without any prior culinary experience and further confounded locals by offering a fixed menu with 2 seatings. No one knew what that was. We all owe Buddy a debt of gratitude for his courage and for laying the groundwork for all of us chefs, so give it up, please, for Buddy Holler. The second guy on the screen is John Forty. Guys, yeah, all right. John Forty should do this if he hasn't. Has he done it? He's amazing. So when I met John, he was the curator of grounds and chief horticulturist at Strawberry Bank, but he was also one of the founding members of our local slow food chapter. John patiently taught me a lot about heirloom plants and gardening, and about life, and allowed me to create Black Trumpet's first heirloom garden, a raised bed at Strawberry Bank that I personally seeded, weeded, and watered for the first few years of Black Trumpet's existence. John is now a successful author and is about to release the second title, while his first book, The Heirloom Gardener, which you should all own, is now available as an audiobook. John Forty. Sam Hayward In the early 70s, Sam Hayward left a career as a musician when he was offered a position as the first chef of Shoals Marine Lab on Appledore Island, a marine science facility co-operated by Cornell and UNH. Today, in his early 70s, Sam is a legendary chef and owner of 4th Street in Portland. He is considered by many to be the godfather of modern Maine cuisine, and along with Jasper White, paved the way for hundreds of chefs looking to bring their own flair to New England dining. Thank you. I cannot thank you enough, Sam Hayward, for being my FriendTor. So there were also a lot of organizations that helped form my worldview, my community view, and to the extent that I am a mentor, I owe a lot to them. One of them is Chefs Collaborative, which was a national organization that Jen alluded to when she introduced me. They found me. They tracked me down in 2008 and eventually asked me to be on their board to create and coordinate a network of local chapters around the country. So that was mentorship that I did not see coming. But what was really cool about that is that we had done enough really amazing work in our community that it was valuable to others. So the shared best practices became this really amazing network of hundreds of chefs in the United States. So for 6 years, I talked to incredibly inspiring chefs, and sustainability ran the risk of becoming a shallow buzzword that would be co-opted by restaurants and chefs, and it did in fact do that. But the mentoring that went on in those 6 years was an example how good ideas can be viruses too. Slow Food, whose motto, "Good, clean food for all," steered my work, brought me to make a dinner for 100 people at the the United Nations building, where I cooked for the founder, Carlo Petrini, of Slow Food, and all of the bigwigs in that organization internationally. And also, I took a trip with John Forti to Torino, Italy for the Terra Madre experience, which is a biennial thing that Slow Food does. Slow Food is still active. I'm still a member. And on the bottom right there, you'll see something that came out of this organization, both Slow Food and Chefs Collaborative, and that is a table in a barn in Stratham where we hosted something called the Barn Dinner for many, many years, where chefs from this community all contributed courses, and we highlighted heirloom ingredients that were commercially imperiled or extinct. And then, that was pretty cool, right? In the middle is Jenna Roselle, now Jenna Darcy, and I didn't know where else to put her in this slideshow, but she is most definitely a mentor to me. She was our first heirloom gardener at Meadowsmith Farm for our heirloom garden, and then we created a massive heirloom garden on that farm that she curated for many years before moving into the hinterland of Maine, where she now has a really great podcast that you can follow. And she is also one of the foremost foragers in our region, so she was a mentor to me in that regard, teaching me a lot about native vascular plants. I knew a lot about mushrooms, named my restaurant after one, but she was the one who really taught me about wild plants. So out of these organizations, I was able to create, with a lot of good friends, some of whom might be in this room, Heritage Harvest Project. So, thank you. Yeah. You know how you look over the people and you never see who's right up front? Do you guys also know one of my favorite mentors in this community, Joanna Kelly? Isn't she? That's true. I should tip the hat to Joanna and David Vargas, both of whom have been on this stage before. And so now Heritage Harvest Project is Cultivate, a 501c3 nonprofit that runs the two events that I had a hand in creating, Pharmacue and BIPOC Fest. You've heard the plug already, but I'm just going to reiterate, August 17th, Strawberry Bank. Be there. It's an amazing, amazing event. So please join us. So while it's easy to point to the people and organizations I consider my mentors, it is significantly harder to identify and discuss my own approach to mentorship. Much of it has been inadvertent. And I guess I once thought that in order to be a mentor, it is assumed you have to be an expert. And I view my work as a perpetual learning process. But now, having befriended many of my mentors, who are now FriendTors, I fully realize that I can be a mentor and a mentee at the same time. So as I stand here telling you that I don't consider myself an expert in anything, I will now contradict that statement, or at least the public perception will contradict it. This is my book, and I'm not sure if any of you know this. Thank you. If you don't know, once you write a book, you become an expert in whatever field your book is based on. So almost 10 years ago, when my book came out, I was referred to as a published author, which I later learned instantly made me an expert. My book documents not only Black Trumpet's story and lots of recipes, but also documents our food community in the Seacoast. When I toured bookstores, libraries, and dingy church basements in support of the book's publication, I talked a lot all around the Northeast about the power of grassroots organizing and tackling broken food systems in our area. My story was personal, and I was very clearly a chef and writer, but decidedly not a food system scholar. Yet people listened to me because I was now an expert. If I ever write another book, which people ask me all the time, I think it might be a legacy project, possibly a young adult novel along the lines of Dr. Seuss's visionary book, The Lorax. And my book could be summed up in this rhyming couplet, which I think Theodore Geisel would appreciate. If I see a broken system, I feel compelled to fix it. You'll never be a victim if you find what's wrong and nix it. I can say with glee that I have employed this couplet many times in my career. And during the pandemic, my strong belief in the power of collaboration and community engagement was put to the test, and I think I can now say it paid off. With a lot of help from this great city and other creative organizers, we built a pop-up parking lot. That was pretty cool, right? Where restaurants like mine that had minimal to zero outdoor dining options could prosper and also give folks something to heal their cabin fever. And I built a relationship with one of our greatest community organizations, Gather, that I am confident, And I am confident that relationship will last as long as I am living and people in our food shed are hungry. Yes. I feel proud to say that since opening a restaurant, I have come up with lots of other crazy ideas, as if opening a restaurant wasn't crazy enough. I've rallied people around those ideas and ultimately executed those ideas for what I hope is the betterment of our community. It's like Planet Weird all over again. Bringing new people to those events to learn, see, and taste the message is a form of mentorship. Yet arguably, my greatest achievement is one that needs your help. About 4 years ago, I had the idea to start up a culinary school. Yeah, because the post-pandemic labor pool was quickly drying up and there was no infrastructure in our immediate region to encourage future culinarians to pursue education in that field. I wrote a curriculum, I hired the best possible chef instructors, found an eager and capable host in Great Bay Community College, give it up for Great Bay, and landed a home for the program at 801 Islington, right here in downtown. The 12-week program is called Culinary Arts and Sustainable Foodways, and there is no culinary education like it in the United States. Getting this program off the ground was a 3+ year process that resulted in our first cohort in spring of this year. Almost everyone in our first graduating class is currently working locally in our industry, which is exactly what we hope to achieve. Our next cohort begins on September 8, just 8 weeks away, and we currently have 2 of the 8 students we need enrolled. So I'm taking this opportunity, even though I didn't sign up for a pitch, because the community college system does not have deep marketing pockets, so I'm asking you all to engage in a grassroots community marketing effort to help aspiring cooks know about us. Scholarships are available. Our first cohort loved their experience. So please use that QR code on the screen. Spread the gospel. I can guarantee you that people are going to gain something from this educational experience. Right. In summation, I can't believe I'm almost done. I bet you can, though. You got the clock right there. The future of mentorship in our community has a great vehicle in this program, and I also want people to be thinking about how this is a resource for chefs who are aging out of working on the line. The fact that I haven't done that yet is unbelievable. But this program will offer them opportunities as well as future culinarians. And so I'm going to summon a pretty great mentor mantra that I just heard like 2 days ago. It's a quote from my good friend and co-conspirator, David Vargas, from his recent Seacoast Stories podcast. After discussing how he responded to acts of racist aggression in his literal front yard during the pandemic, Dave said, "I not only have the opportunity to make someone the best chef, but I'm also going to make them the best human being at the same time." Thank you, David Vargas. Thank you all. Thank you, Creative Mornings. I love you.
Yes, chef, indeed. Yes, chef.